This is Leafs Morning Take with Nick Alberga and Jay Rosehill.
Now we've got a fight started here right off the bat with Rosehill.
30 minutes of live, non-stop Leafs talk starts now.
Hey, what do you say? What a response by the Maple Leafs on Tuesday night against the Tampa Bay Lightning. Nick Alberga and Jay Rosehill with you. Rosie, what a night at Scotiabank Arena. That was brilliant stuff, man.
Wasn't it, though? I mean, I didn't want to pump that game up too much, and either way, it wasn't going to be like a defining deal, but man, it was a game I wanted. It was a game that for what I believe in this team, for what I've seen, I was wanting them to take that step and be like, no, we're in control of what we fucking do, and come out there and kind of smash the Lightning. And they took it to them, man. They took it to them start to finish, top line to bottom line. It was just a really solid hockey game that I was happy to see them play after a bit of a hiccup, man. It was nice response.
Back on track. I think that was aptly named in the topic here. Remember to subscribe, tap that like button, leave us a review wherever you're checking us out. And don't forget to visit LeafsNation.com for the very latest on all things Toronto Maple Leafs. Thoughts, comments, concerns, or questions. Drop us a line in the chat down below here on YouTube. Your concerns as well. You can voice them. I don't know who's going to have a concern with the Maple Leafs so far this season, especially in the last 6-7 weeks. They've been outstanding. What an effort against Tampa Bay Lightning. Should mention in about, 8 minutes from now or so, Tim Micallef, the host of Tim and Friends on Sportsnet. I am a former friend, by the way. That was an amazing and fun experience for me a couple of years back. Tim Micallef will drop by. We'll get his thoughts on the Toronto Maple Leafs moving forward. One more game, the next-gen game coming up on Thursday. Note the start time, by the way, Rosie. 2 Eastern time. That would make it noon Mountain.
A matinee for the boys. That's going to be fun watching. I always like mixing it up a little bit from the normal 5 p.m. start that the Maple Leafs always have slotted.
Yeah, I always forget. You're 2 hours behind us here on the East Coast. With that in mind, let's get over the boards. So nice and tidy 4-1 victory against Tampa Bay Lightning. Let's be frank about it. It was pretty much a 2-1 game. 2 empty net goals, one from Engvall, one from Nylander. But you were like a prophet yesterday. We'll call you a Rostradamus because we talked about Andrei Vasilevskiy, man. He was incredible. 36 stops, and I think the only reason that game was close, right?
Yeah, for sure. He gave him a chance to win, but I mean, it goes both ways. It looks a little bit lopsided because of the score. But it should be that. It should be that way because I thought it was a lopsided game from the very beginning. I mean, the Tampa Bay Lightning couldn't even get a shot on net. There were so many chances, especially in that first half of the game. It could have been 3-4-1 out of the first period. And Vasilevskiy was doing, his creamy goodness in between the pipes there. So he kept him in the game, but I thought the Maple Leafs outplayed them top to bottom, and Vasilevskiy made it close. And at the end of the day, you tag in a couple empty netters. It looks like the score that it should have been, I think.
Yeah, if you missed the show yesterday, Rosie pretty much said that Vasilevskiy's creaminess could be go a big way in dictating the game, and I think he was right. But again, Toronto still gets the upper hand. I think it shows a lot about the fortitude of the Leafs to have a performance like that from Andrei Vasilevskiy, where pretty much this guy never surrenders a third goal. And they still found a way to persevere in the game. And a hot start. Like, that was the biggest difference from the games on Broadway and against Washington, Rosie. The first 10 minutes or so, the Leafs were all over them. And the first period, it was just a much better start overall for them last night.
Yeah, it was. I was waiting to see how this group kind of started the game. They couldn't have been happy after the run they were on to drop 2 in regulation. Then you got a big kind of divisional opponent with a history who's playing really well coming into town. And it's like, this is one where you could start to get into some quicksand and all of a sudden, shit, we lose this one. Then like, okay, well, what's going on and why can't we find our game? And I thought it was a big pivotal game for them to be able to take control and put the past behind them and not spin their wheels. And they did exactly that. I was really impressed with the way that they came out firing, man. They were just peppering them. They were in control of the puck, control of the play. They had poise. It just didn't matter what happened in that game. It just looked like the Toronto Maple Leafs were poised, and there was no panic, there was no desperation. It was just a really solid hockey game by them, and really good to see after a couple dropped games. It's what they needed to do, and it proves to me that they're in control of their own game, and they can show up when they need it. And I think it's something that this group has been missing for a while.
So the Leafs snapped their 2-game mini skid. They're 1-0-1 against Tampa. So that's 3 of a possible 4 points against the Lightning so far this season. And they're 5 points up now in the standings. But again, the Lightning do have 2 games in hand. Auston Matthews, his 17th. Again, he is starting to cook. And this has been a story for the last little while. And Auston Matthews looking much better. Love the skates last night. He's really, really feeling it, which is excellent news as we head into 2023. And then Michael Bunting has 4 goals in his past 5 outings. We talked about him last week, how maybe integral it is for the Leafs to look at that contract potentially and sign it, hammer it down before we even get close to free agency when it comes to Michael Bunting. Speaking of which, Dan Kelly, I think this is the big sidebar story to the game last night. NHL linesman Dan Kelly shoving Michael Bunting off the ice after a skirmish with some of the Lightning players. I know we were texting back and forth. You had a bigger issue maybe than I did, but what did you see on that play?
Well, when it happened live, I was fucking losing it because I thought it was, I was like, is this going to go unannounced? Is anyone going to talk about this? And as it unfolded, they talked about it on the panel, they talked about it on Twitter, everyone was going nuts. So it was definitely something that was addressed that was as big a deal as I think it should have been. But I don't want to come down too hard on a guy. I mean, Dan Kelly, he's kind of mixed. He's mixed with the American Hockey League and the NHL. And here you see it. He's getting off, and like, this is so unacceptable. That is a top 6 forward on a top 4 or 5 NHL hockey team, and you're tossing him down the tunnel. I mean, imagine like he hits the rubber back behind the ice there when he shoves him and falls flat on his fucking back. It would just be so bad. I'm glad that didn't happen, but think about when a player has an interaction with an official, even if it's like a positive thing and you put your hand on his shoulder and stuff, he's going to be like, what the fuck are you, like, what are you doing? You don't touch me, right? That's just the hockey culture, and it's necessary. It's respect. Those guys in stripes, you don't touch them. But in return, you're not going to get that kind of shit from an official. You don't grab a player. You don't shove him. You do what you can. You wrap your arms around him. You do what you got to do. And I don't want to be too hard on Dan Kelly. What I want to address is maybe the NHL and what they're telling these guys to do in those situations. I mean, I remember playing at the end of my career, and it like a scrum, like you just get into a little scrum where guys are chit-chatting, little FUs going back and forth. They grab a guy, get in his ear. And by the end there, the officials were screaming at you like you were freaking committing murder, and you're looking at them going, can you shut up? Like, what are you doing here? And they're freaking out over a scrum. And I think it comes from the NHL down. Hey, you gotta stop this stuff. You gotta cut it out. We don't want to see any of that skirmishes and stuff like that. And I don't understand why. Is there any chance of like head trauma or injury in those scrums? No. Is anyone doing anything outlandish? No. Is it entertaining? Does everyone in the building and watching on TV love it? Yes. So that's where my problem comes from. And I've got a friend who's a linesman in the NHL, and he said he will get disciplined from that. The NHL wants us to jump in quick. It makes the referee's job easier, and they want to just kind of combat that stuff to make it easier on the actual referees. And he said that guy crossed the line there. He's an ex-player. He probably got caught up in I'm part of this right now mode and gave a little shove. And I think it's just something that I'm just going to let go on Dan Kelly and say, hey, I think he made a mistake and he'll be dealt with. And I'm not as hot about it as I was when it happened. But without a doubt, that needs to be addressed and talked about and made sure that that doesn't happen. You just don't fucking do that, or it's going to go the other way and guys are going to start shoving linesmen back if that became the normal. And then you got a big problem on your hand.
My initial response was to laugh. And then after that, I'm like, well, hold on. What did I see here? But how many times do we see a skirmish in the NHL where the players sort of sort it out and they don't need the officials, right? Like, I think more times than not, and you used to fight in this league, maybe it's a bit different, but more times than not, there's not going to be a scrap. It's just a big fuck you match, right? And so I don't know why there was the urge from the linesman there to make sure Bunting got off the... He wasn't doing anything, was he, Rosie?
He was doing nothing. It was a scrum. I mean, let them scrum, let them chat, come up behind, let them know, hey, boys, hey, enough. Hey, the buzzer's gone, boys. Let's move on. That's all you got to do. Let them go. The crowd's clapping. Everyone's watching. I mean, everyone watching at home, oh, what's going on here? Instead of going and getting your refreshment at the buzzer, you're watching the little scrum. Everyone loves it. No one's getting hurt. And to do that says to me that the NHL is telling these linesmen, get in there, don't let anything happen, shut all that stuff down so quick. And that just pisses me off. It's like the NHL has their talons in this game enough to bring out, the intensity and that competitiveness that makes it hockey, getting in a guy's face, little face wash, little FU match, little what are you going to do? Ooh, let's see how this period starts after that. It's nice. It's fun. It's exciting. It's awesome. The players love it. The fans love it. Let it relax. And to the point where no one's getting hurt, like you said, and it was an absolutely nothing scrum for a liney to be physically like tossing guys around is fucking crazy.
Guaranteed you're going to get this conversation later on today when you watch Tim and Friends. So happy to bring in the host of the aptly named Tim and Friends. It is Tim Micallef. Timmy boy, what's going on, buddy?
What's going on, gentlemen?
Not too much. You got to give us a preview of the show. We know this conversation is coming later today. What was your read on Dan Kelly and Michael Bunting?
I don't want to step in the way of Jay's take here, but I have a little bit of a different feel on what happened there. And I completely agree. If it's just a scrum, what I think happened there was Bunting, and he's rather verbose. He can talk a little bit. And what I think happened was he took the slash from Sergachev and he was yelling at the officials. And that's why Dan Kelly reacted the way Dan Kelly reacted, because he was almost protecting his ref. But he went way too far. I don't think it was the scrum, him pulling out Bunting and saying, you're a pain in the ass, we don't want you doing this. I think what he said was, like, if you see the scrum here, he's not even involved. He comes over, gives a little bit, but then he's like, did you see the slash? And he starts yelling about the slash. And that's when I think, like, there's a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B. Because just before the scrum, he was yelling at the refs. And Kelly, as you know, Jay, had a little bit of a history of being a bit of an enforcer when he played in the A. And I think maybe he came over and played official enforcer, which I guarantee you Stephen Walkham does not want any part of. He doesn't want his guys doing that at all. But I think him screaming at the refs before may have mitigated what the response was.
That could be, and I don't want to get mad personally at Dan Kelly. I'm sure he'll be dealt with, but I don't want this to all come down on Dan Kelly. My kind of issue is with, the NHL and the way they're telling them to settle that stuff down so much. I remember feeling that really take a huge change there some years back. But I agree with you. I think he feels like he's playing and got all excited and crowds into it. And he's like, this guy needs to get off the ice. He can't be. And then he just, it's to be honest, if I had that job, I would be in trouble for the same thing. But you got to watch it and you can't set that precedent. And it was a bad look, but I hope it's not coming down too hard on Dan Kelly personally, and they just kind of, hey, let these guys do their thing and stay in the background, is what I hope the message is relayed, and it's not a total personal attack on Dan Kelly, because I can imagine a lot of guys out there would do the same thing.
Yeah, and I'm going to guess that he'll get a quick talking to, say that can't happen again, because you're right. If a guy starts shoving back, we have a completely different story on Tim and Friends and on Leafs Morning Take for sure.
We know that you're going to talk about it today at the very least. Another guy I'm sure going to talk about quite a bit over the next couple of months, Michael Bunting, who was involved in that altercation. At this point, do you think the Leafs have to make it a priority to try and re-sign this guy? Like, I think he means too much to this team, if you can believe it.
Yeah, it's really interesting. He's really bounced back from that shuffle down to the bottom six. And what you saw last night, I watched the pregame media availability. And there was a quote from Bunting in that one, and he just said, these are the games you wake up for, about this, December game against the Lightning. And obviously, Leafs and Lightning, there's a little bit of history there, but this is the type of player that the Leafs absolutely need to be successful. Someone who will get, and remember, like, he was banged up in that playoff series, and he wasn't his normal self. What you saw last night was Michael Bunting at his best. And I don't want to, make the recency bias draw a direct line from last night's game to you need to re-sign him. But at his best, he is definitely a dude that this team kind of sort of needs. A pain in the ass, a guy that can play on your top line, put up points, and still be a burr. Like Sergachev throwing that that slash at him is nothing, but it's also proof that, you know, Bunting's getting under skin, right? And he got under the skin of the officials that he got so deep. And I think the Leafs need that kind of guy. I don't know what that costs in this modern NHL. I think we can all agree that he benefits from playing who he plays with. So you got to be careful in overvaluing that. But it is definitely a roster piece that I think the Leafs kind of sort of need. And Nylander's another one there, right? Like you look at those numbers, and as soon as you said re-sign, I wondered if that was going to go Nylander's way. 19 goals. Like the Leafs are against the cap. They got to re-sign guys. They haven't made it past a round. There is going to be some real tough decisions to be made here.
Yeah, big time. I worry about this summer, and that's why, you know, I feel like now's the time where they've put this thing together. And, you know, every time they have a test, it seems like they show up more than they have in the past. And I just like how well-rounded they are. Last night was a great example. And I agree, like, Michael Bunting, what is this team like? What is this top six like without him? You know, he plugs a very important hole, and he does it very well. And he is the only guy to do certain things out there and does it very well, and then can complement these guys. And like you touched on, Tim, he had that bottom six thing going on. He was bouncing around a little bit. He didn't have the greatest start in the world. And how did he handle it? He handled it perfectly. Like, he's a guy that can go do that and be like, he seems to have his head on straight. He's not freaking out. He's not a drama queen. He's a team guy, team first. I have a feeling his teammates all love him, and he's just a guy that does a really, really valuable job really well. And yeah, he's going to need to be signed. But again, is he going to be looking for, he's a guy that we could lose because he's going to be looking for such outrageous money. It's like, you're not worth that. You got to play with X and Y for the last how many years? You know, it's not going to be like a James Neal situation where you think he's a freaking god. And it's like, he was playing with Crosby and Malkin for 5 years. Like, can we not like put some value in that? So it's tough, and I'm worried about this coming up signing and these guys, because like you say, there's other guys that need to be signed too, and they're already against the cap. So that's kind of why I got my eggs in this season's basket, because I don't think it's going to get any better in the next few.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. And I also think, like, you look around the league and there's a bunch of teams in the same position. We were talking about the Vancouver Canucks, and like, they've got to tear it down and they're against the cap. Like, it's a situation where GMs have to make really hard decisions to be a good team. You saw it in Tampa, right? Like, they had to make really tough decisions on players that they liked because they became too good. And we're seeing it around the league where if you overvalue one or two players, you can put yourself in a real tough spot, and no one's going to bail you out. And that's what Dubas and the Leafs are facing here. And I think a lot of it has to do with what they do in the playoffs. And I think a lot of this will be kicked down the road to see what they do in the playoffs. But Jay, you wanted this team yesterday. I heard you talking, take this game by the scruff of the neck and drag it through. And that's exactly what they did, right? Like, and Bunting was a big part. Like, obviously the goal scorers doing what the goal scorers do, and the talent on this team doing what the talent does. But every once in a while, when you want that game to be grabbed by the scruff of the neck and taken, you know, to the finish line, you need a guy like Bunting. And I thought he was a big part of answering exactly what you wanted to see, Jay, in that game.
Totally.
I love that. That's why Timmy's a professional at his best. You know, he does the research and prepares himself accordingly for the show. I wanted to play Armchair GM. I like that. We appreciate that. We're friends. We're friends right away. Play Armchair GM for us. If you're Kyle Dubas, what are you after between now and March 3rd, the trade deadline?
The immediate answer is kind of funny to me, because I would have said like a big, strong defenseman. And over the last little while, I still think when it matters most, you need somebody beating the shit out of people in front of the net and making you pay to get to tough areas. And I don't know that the Leafs necessarily have that, but I mean, I was just doing the numbers for our show later tonight, and both Murray and Samsonov rank in the top 6 in the NHL in goals against and in save percentage. And if you had told me that the Leafs, I mean, they lost another defenseman last night, Sandin goes down. That's the type of game last night where you would have thought the Leafs of the past would buckle, right? You dominate, you outshoot the opponents severely, but when push comes to shove late, get it down to 2-1, that defense and the goaltending kind of buckles. And that didn't happen last night. And they're not doing it the old-fashioned way. There's no Chris Pronger. There's no Mark Tenorti out there just beating the snot out of someone in front of the net. I can't argue with the results, but in the back of my mind, I still keep thinking, like, last year we were saying the exact same thing about this team and Jack Campbell, right? Like, I mean, we went to the Christmas break and Campbell was like top 1, top 2 in goals against and save percentage, and it changed in the second half of the season. I think in my gut, listen, I want to give them credit. This is a long way to answer the question. I want to give them credit for what they've done thus far with a banged up blue line and Kyle Dubas absolutely rolling the dice on these 2 goalies. But my gut tells me they still need someone on the back end that I don't even care if it's 13 minutes a game that has guys when they go to the front going, who's behind me here? Who's gonna, if I'm gonna post up and go get this greasy goal, get my Corey Perry goal, who's gonna, plant a stick in my back in the right spot just below the shoulder pads and the pants? Like, who's doing that to me? And I don't know if the Leafs have that right now. So that would be if they were able to add, and it's going to be tough, salary cap, blah, blah, blah. That's what I would look at.
Rosie, final one to you.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that. And I like the fact that, you give them their due for what they've done so far. But again, it, as impressive as this season has been, they've had impressive seasons before. And I just don't think they're going to get their final due and tip of the cap until they get it done. I mean, they've put themselves in that position, right? By putting together pretty good teams, by putting together teams that look like they've got at least enough to get to the second round and not getting it done. So I mean, my host here is Nick Alberga, and he's the consummate fucking prove it to me when it happens kind of guy, and yes, for good reason, right? You follow this outfit for long enough, and there's reason to be frustrated and be skeptical every time they have a good team, but something does feel different about this. And you got to give them their due when their defense they have every reason in the world to be just piled up on the back end and not getting it done, and have every excuse in the book with the injuries they've had, and they continually find ways to get it done. So if they, I agree with everything you said. If they could improve on it, fantastic. It's just so hard to do in this day and age with making deals and getting something done that makes sense for both sides. I don't know if it's going to happen, but hopefully something comes across the table to make this team better. But they're doing really, really well with what they have so far, and I hope that continues. And like you said, it's up in the air because they were looking pretty good this time of year last year, and certainly didn't get her done.
Tim, are you subscribing to Rep? Are you subscribing to the Ryan O'Reilly conversation, the Bo Horvat conversation? We all know Patrick Kane's name is going to be bandied about over the next couple months too.
Yeah. I just don't know how the Leafs do that, like without moving a significant piece of their own salary cap wise, or there's something. I mean, we saw Morgan Riley back on the ice. Like, that's $5 million that you can move to add a piece like that. Like, Nick, I'll ask you, who are you moving to make a deal like that? And listen, I love Ryan O'Reilly, and we heard, obviously the Canucks are in a spot where they're moving guys, and now Tyler Myers' name is coming up more often than not. That's still $6 million. Like, how do you fit that into the Leafs cap? I just don't know how they can make a real significant move without someone going down and being, I mean, I guess it's Muzzin's money, right? Like, that's where you're going to try and find that. And if Muzzin is in fact done, then you might be able to put that in there. So I guess you can do it with Muzzin not playing the rest of the year. There are whispers that he might not play again, and that would be shitty for him. But if they can fit it in, I get a Ryan O'Reilly, especially given the depth of this team. I would also get, like, if you can pick up someone somewhere else and put that in there. What about I guess that's too much money. So going to throw Seth Jones' name out there because everyone's talking about the Chicago Blackhawks. Why wouldn't they talk about Seth Jones? Like, are they going to keep him around for this rebuild? I just feel like that's one of those names that hasn't been talked about enough, even though Chicago's saying, hey, Dave Skane, you want him, here he is. I'd take Seth Jones.
The only problem with Jones is that's as close to an untradeable contract as you can find in this league right now. I think what he makes 9.5 per season. He's got 1 billion years left. I just don't know if anybody wants to venture to that level. I think to your point, like creativity is the name of the game. How often in the NBA do we see 3, 4 team, 5 team trades? Major League Baseball has them sometimes. It's just tougher to do business in the NHL. And I think when you look at the Kane potential of a trade or even a Jonathan Taves, teams are going to have to get creative with Chicago. That means eating 50%, maybe including a third team. I think there are hoops to get through, and I think along those lines, there's got to be a name like Alex Kerfoot who's involved in the conversation, especially if he's not going to play in the top 6. You have enough bottom 6 guys, but we'll leave the conversation at that. I'm looking forward to Tim and Friends today. You know, I'm a baseball guy. I still can't comprehend what the fuck happened with Carlos Correa, so I'm going to tune in because now apparently he's a New York Met. I went to bed last night, I woke up, and now he's a New York Met. What gives?
Yeah, that was the one that had me shaking my head. I think this is terrible for baseball. I honestly think this is absolutely terrible for baseball. Like if you're a bottom 10 team in Major League Baseball, like you're just collecting the luxury tax and moving on. Like Steve Cohen is paying for your team at this point. You just like if you're an owner, you can't compete with that. You're just going to take the money and run. Like it's ridiculous. And baseball should have promotion and relegation. That's where I'm at now. Like I've got a hot take. They need promotion and relegation, and they need to kick teams out for not spending. Because if you're the Kansas City Royals and Steve Cohen's going to pay basically for your salary through luxury tax, love, peace, and hair grease. Give me the money. I'm moving on.
I love that. And the best part of this is now they have not one but 2 all-star shortstops. And then you look at the Jays, they don't have a shortstop. And yes, that's shade at Bo Bichette. We'll leave it at that. Boom. Snap it to me. Oh, yeah, snap it. Thanks for this, buddy. Appreciate it.
Hey, anytime, boys. Appreciate it. I'm a fan, and I love the real talk.
Thanks, Tim.
Take care, bud. Guy's the absolute best. Again, I had a chance to go on Tim and Friends a couple years ago, and he was just salt of the earth. Pretty much as advertised on TV or now in person. That's how Tim Micallef is. So very appreciative of his time and his takes, right? Takes are important in this day and age. I did throw some shade there a bit at Bo Bichette. Can't play shortstop defensively, wicked hitter. But that's a story for another day, Rosie. There's a lot to talk about in Leafs land. We'll get to the Sandin injury in mere moments. But first, this is your moment to shine. The wrap-up is brought to you by our friends at PointsBet Canada. All right, Rosie. So I was on the Nylander's shot prop. Thankfully for all, it hit. He had, I believe, 7 shots on goal. But I laid the red carpet out for you tonight. It is your time to shine. Let's hear it.
You sure did. And I came up with a creative one after a couple of whiskeys and eggnog last night. I started thinking, looking through the schedule, and what I've got going on is a little parlay, which we haven't done on this show yet. A little bit dicey, but I think this one's a winner. And you're going to take 2 unvaluable bets, pair them together, and all of a sudden you're getting plus money, and that's how you get her done. So I am taking Tampa Bay Lightning on the money line versus the Wings. I think they're going to bounce back after that Toronto game. They were just outmatched by Toronto, but they were very much on a bit of a heater there, and quality team. I think they're going to smash the Wings. You take them money line and you parlay that with Vegas against Arizona. I think that game speaks for itself. Vegas being starting to rise up as one of the premier teams there in the West, and Arizona Coyotes are a glorified East Coast Hockey League franchise, so that speaks for itself. We're parlaying those together, and I think we get about a plus 115 for our money, so jump on that. You will not be disappointed.
I like the conviction. I told you off air, I'll bring it on air. I actually have money on the Coyotes puck line in that game, and we've ripped on that team quite a bit on this show. Dude, they're actually playing pretty good for the personnel on that roster. Like, you look at some other teams in this league, you're like, how are you that shit? Then you look at Arizona, they seem to be in every game. So I'd watch out for that one today. I wouldn't go as far as to say that they're going to win that game. So again, we still like your bet, but I think they're definitely going to be involved maybe till the bitter end against the Vegas Golden Knights. So excellent stuff there, Rosie. We mentioned the Sandin injury. It's got to be next man up, right? And to your point, and it was an excellent one you made earlier on, this team has not skipped a beat. It does not matter. Like, every game, a new guy goes down. By the way, it was great to see Liljegren come back. I know he missed a period the other day, came back strong, didn't miss a game. But now Sandin's down with a neck injury. it's next man up. And I get, the positive story, as Tim referenced, is Morgan Riley's closing in on a return, right?
Yeah, I mean, this is getting to be kind of old hat for the Leafs. I mean, they're used to it. They're starting to get someone back from the IR, and they are waiting for that, and then right about the same time, somebody else important goes down. So it just is what it is, and at least they're used to it. But how long can you play with fire and keep running through a depleted roster and not face any consequences? Because they really haven't. I mean, getting these injuries piled on, it was all part of their streak and their hot month and a half there. And it's not something you want to do, but I'm just prepared for this to happen, for the majority of the year. And maybe they get healthy by playoffs, maybe not. But again, I mean, they're getting it done. They're building character, which I think is the biggest thing. And I don't think that losing him is going to change that. They're going to go, like you say, next man up's going to hopefully step in and make an impact and step up and play over his head, even if he's not ready. We've had everyone and their dog come into this lineup and make some kind of an impact. And, you just got to hope they continue doing that and that Sandin's not out that long. And like you say, you're going to hit him with Morgan Riley coming back here soon. So there's just a revolving door of injuries. And, all you can say is at least they're used to it.
Yeah, definitely. And so the Dryden Hunt era is off to a roaring start. We'll see if he can crack this Maple Leafs lineup. I was sort of meh on Calle Yarncroke, who returned yesterday. I know he picked up an assist on the empty netter, but I still think there's a gaping hole on that second line, and maybe they solidify that over the next couple of months. Sean writes in, the Leafs are the second best team in the league behind Boston right now. Of course, they're one behind Vegas too, so check in on that. Tim writes in, the Leafs should go out and pick up Luke Shen. What do you make of that? Former guest on this show.
I think we'd have to go back to October and take some sound clips out of our conversation. He didn't that too much. He's got obligations to the Vancouver Canucks. And, I know personally he's set up pretty good near his hometown and families and pregnancies and lots is going on with life. I think that's the last thing he's thinking about. But selfishly, It'd be cool to see that jersey back on Luke Shen, where it all started when he was just an 18-year-old little fresh-faced bugger. But we'll see if that happens.
I took a peek at the schedule. The St. Louis Blues are coming up, so maybe we get the other Shen brother on, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, let's do that, see what his takes are. But no, those two are thick as thieves. I don't think we're going to get too much out of Lukey Boy or out of Braden when he's talking about his brother moving to the Maple Leaf.
Yeah, we're looking for you're so entrenched in the media life now. You're just looking for that quote, man. You're looking for that quote in that interview. I think you've really changed your mentality from player to media member. I love it.
Yeah, they were chirping me after, being like, "What was that, Rosie?" I'm like, "I got a job, boys. I got a job."
Yeah. Then see now you have an appreciation, I'm sure, for the media's job, right?
Oh, it just so profound appreciation above and beyond the poor media members. They're just so mistreated and misthoughted that it's just really tough, and I see that now.
Yeah, I agree. I sense some sarcasm there, but fuck you. So we'll wrap with that. The next gen game is coming up tomorrow. I'm like the official. You're like Bunting. It's like he blew, and all of a sudden, he went flying in the wind, man. It was unbelievable to me.
It's like when I'm talking and trying to make a hot take, you just shove me through the gate and say, we're ending it now. We're 4 minutes overtime right now.
Yeah, but the best part is we're about the same size, so I'm not sure I'd shove you anywhere, to be honest. But it was just, I don't know. We'll see if anything comes of that over the next couple of days. But at the very least, I think we had to talk about it. I know I put out a thread yesterday. Some people were like, why is this even being spoken about? Some were like, yeah, he should be reprimanded. So I'm just interested because I very rarely do you see something like that in this league. And I think the linesman overstepped himself a bit. I just thought, I'm like, how often do skirmishes happen in the NHL and it's a big fuck you match and the players just skate away? Like, I understand why the league is urging the officials to be like, step in as quickly as possible. Like my biggest beef ever with this league right now is when guys are about to go and the officials jump in. Like, just let them dance. I mean, I don't care if it's 2022, if it's 1996. I know it's from the orders up, down. But, all in all, I think we all know the players were going to skate away anyways. The period's over. They're going to skate to the room, Rosie.
Yeah, and to my point on why that's just so unnecessary and unacceptable is, like, look what you've done. Like they have crossed the line as the NHL, trying to shut that down. And what's frustrating is it's for no good reason. Why are you in there so aggressively? Why are you wanting your linemen in there so aggressively to stop an absolutely nothing thing that has no negative, consequences to it? The fans like it. It's exciting. Let the guys chirp off. Let the heat build up a bit. You're not making it harder on the ref. You're not doing anything. And what's going to happen when you instruct those linesmen to get in there harder and harder and quicker and separate faster and faster? You're going to get things like this. And it's nice that it was, Bunting getting shoved and not Bunting doing the shoving after getting manhandled like that, because then you got a big problem. And does the NHL want that on their plate? No. So I think that I think it'll be talked about, but the NHL is going to, deal with it, say, hey, you can't do that. Maybe we need to back off a little bit. And then they'll just brush that under the rug. And I doubt we'll talk about it again, but it definitely needed to be addressed.
What we'll talk about is Three Hits with Rosie coming up tomorrow. I was reading the mentions on the Leafs Nation Twitter, and somebody said there should have been a Three Hits with Rosie just strictly on Dan Kelly. So we're looking forward to that. You're off tomorrow. I'll have Carlo Koliakovo, former Toronto Maple Leaf, now host of First Up on the TSN radio network here in Toronto. He'll drop by at 10 minutes past the hour coming up tomorrow. So we're signed, sealed, and delivered. And again, we'll be with you one more time before the holiday break coming up on Friday. Scheduling note as well for next week. We'll be with you just twice, Tuesday and Thursday, Leafs game days. So plenty of Leafs Morning Take coming up. Excellent job, Rosie. And we'll talk on Friday, okay?
Sounds good. See you guys then.
There you have it. That's Jay Rosehill. I'm Nick Alberga. Thanks so much for watching and listening. Take care.